And I must admit that that sucked. When I came to that realization, I would rather have been taken back and said, no, you're not quite there. And I think it's a hard issue to make that stand, like Aaron's saying, hey, you have to deal with it. But I think it's a good reality. Steve, do you want to ever be promoted just because you're a nice guy, or you're showing up to the dojo, or do you want to be promoted based upon meeting those standards?
Of course. I mean, I want to be promoted from all the blood, sweat, and tears and time we put in, because that's where we feel the most reward. And you're cheating somebody if you're not giving them that reward because they work so hard. And if it means working that little extra hard, better, more, they're going to appreciate it more in the end.
Yeah, I would think so. How about the dealing with the, let's go down this path, dealing with the organization. So let's deal with,
well, I got a really good example of that.
Go ahead.
Buddy of mine, I'm not going to mention names on this because we're the elephants in the room and I'm going to get trampled on. They're not part of an organization. They've been alone for 25 years. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, 40 years. This organization, this dojo, good friend of mine, I met him about 50 years ago, and he did this weird art called Aikido. I don't know what the hell it was. And matter of fact, I just talked to him last week. He has only 25 black belts and 43 years under his belt because he's so strong with the art and his own individual dojo. That's how he's promoted. Mm-hmm. And they're picky. I've sat on some of his exams before. So, and then I've seen other organizations how they promote. So is that what you're kind of getting at?
Yeah, I think, we all, for disclosure, we all sit on the test committee for our organization and our region. So we have a little bit of experience in this. Well, one of the things that I find hard is when you got separate dojos and they're all in the same organization and they're presenting their students. And if there's not clarity of what that minimum is and what that high part is, everybody comes with a different view.
And experience that.
And then it gets a little rough. So let's kick that around a little bit for how do we deal with something like that? Because there's sometimes I'm looking and I'm going, hey, that person, that's looking good, and then maybe sometimes my buddy right next to me is going, that's horrible, man. And vote up or down. So I think, to me, if you don't have clear defined standards of minimum and also upper level that are enforced by the leadership, you have to have strong leadership that are able to go in and have us be able to look. What do you think about that? What is your feeling about that? Aaron, sorry about that, guys.
I think we have to look at the level and look at the individual, and it's like, is this somebody that's I think we have to be subjective on some level. We have to account for those who are extremely talented. We have to account for those that are extremely talented, and we have to make a path for those that maybe work really hard but not quite as talented, right? And I think, and look at what Aikido is, and it should be inclusive for everybody, right? And so that to me is the challenge. And if you have a student 10 years and you're wondering if you should promote them to a brown belt, and they've been sweeping the mat for 8 or 10 years, I'm probably going to say, let's go ahead and bring them up and promote them. I mean, that's even if they, if you have an elderly person and they can't do Shiko on their, the knee walking exercises, maybe we give them a nod. You got somebody that's got arthritis in their hands or something like that, or you have somebody that maybe has attention deficit disorder or things of that nature, then to make accommodation for those and to understand that. Now, that's a little bit different than looking at your top shelf and promoting people that are maybe the high levels that are then going to go on and be technical experts within your, say, your organization.
Right.
I think those are separate. Those are kind of separate things, and it's hard to wrap official, structure around that. But the reality is that we're not all created at,
Equal.
not we're not all exactly created the same. We might have equal rights, equal weight but we're not all the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that variance, that's why when maybe I look at something and I'm like, oh, that's wonderful, and you look at it and you say, oh, that's horrible, or vice versa, because we're looking at things from a different perspective.
Yes.
Somebody that's going to be up as an expert within the organization or out, teaching out there in out on the road or wherever. Yeah, you should have a strong technical understanding and basis to be able to pass on. Um, but who's going to judge that? If you have somebody that comes up, maybe they went in the Marine Corps, they got 4 years of McMAP, Marine Corps martial arts, and they come and get a brown belt somewhere out in town, and then they go off to a different place across the country and they stand up their own school and they start teaching.
Right.
Like, well, they might have good stuff, but are they really going to be able to adhere to a technical standard of an organization?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that might be more difficult. So we need to be able to account for folks like this if we want to, a point to make is that if we want to compare one person to another, we have to have a common ground, and these are things like your test material. Can you present the same things? But as far as the individual growth of the martial artist and their individual pursuit, their effort, how hard they work, what they do, their ability to interpret and to build on what they're learning and all that, that's an individual endeavor. And that's difficult to take that and make it fit into an organizational structure unless the organization decides, well, we're stronger with this strong martial artist versus we want to exclude this martial artist because they're a little bit different. And I think that's a little bit on the organizational side, something that we need to to look at. But folks like us on a test committee where we are judging these exams for our organization. I think we need to make sure that what we're seeing adheres to the art and the standards of the organization.
Go ahead, Chief. Very good, Aaron.
That Aaron summarized pretty much what I said when I first opened up. Individual thing, but with testing, I think if that student gets up there and demonstrate that, you've got to have basics. No matter how technical somebody is or how non-technical someone is, they have to have the basic taisabaki, their entrance, the application of technique, how they take their balance, and how they throw. Everything from there is kind of subjective on the student's own improvement. But if they can't even get to the basics, then they shouldn't even be up there at that point. There's a point where you don't put your candidate up there. Okay, no matter how good they swept the mat, no matter how talented they were before, but now they can't even do a shodan test of the basic requirement. In an organization you're alluding to, you have to have a basic skeleton criteria. You have to, or you don't have an organization.
Yeah.
So you have to have some criteria. Now, you can make the criteria so high. Are you going to compare the test to the best black belt we ever had, and everybody underneath that's going to flunk? You can't do that. Like I said, like Aaron said, it's an individual thing. Someone's older, someone's younger, someone's crippled, someone has some mental disorder or something, but they're trying, they're there, we got them there. But if they can do the basics and from the organizational criteria, I think we got to move from there.
Yeah, I think we're hitting the core essence of this. The thing that I'm hearing is that, and if I'm catching it right, gentlemen, is you agree, there's a high level for those that are going to really get up there pretty high, and then a minimum level. I think the minimum level is where it gets really blurry. And I'm not quite persuaded at the moment for myself that the terminology that person deserves to go. You know, even if they've been there sweeping the mat, they're always there and everything. And the reason I kind of looking at that is, you know, not everybody's supposed to be a black belt, right? That's just the bottom line. And it's perceived value. A person who comes to join an organization, excuse me, a dojo, has a thing that, you know, a black belt's supposed to mean something. And the more that we dilute that, if we are diluting it, and the only way I can see that getting diluted is if the minimum line isn't really clear. Now, I also think what I'm hearing is we're talking about the exception, not the rule, right? You know, if someone sweeps in, you know, they're not able to do sriwaza, you know, so they're able to do a standing technique. We switch it out, right? I don't know about the arthritis one, though. You know, I'm thinking about it like if someone came to me and they wanted to learn Aikido, and they came to me and they had really bad arthritis or developed through their training, I don't think art's not for them. You know, they're not going to be able to hold the sword. They're not going to manipulate the sword and everything. And as I'm getting older and older, man, you know, things get hurting, dude. You know, and but to just promote based upon that. Am I getting it right? You guys are talking the exception, not the rule on that minimum. Steve?
I think you kind of found your own answer when you said it's blurry and the bottom minimum. We already know the tops can do good and we're gonna and they're gonna excel. But the bottom, it's too blurry. And are we keeping it blurry by not talking about it? The elephant in the room. Are we not addressing it enough? Which is
real quick. Can I interject and you keep going? How do we find that bottom? And we're talking about maybe organizational-wise or individual dojo. Where do we go to find that? How do you
what you're saying? Who's gonna lay down the criteria?
Yeah, and for the minimum, you know.
Who's gonna lay down the minimum? You're asking that, right?
Yeah. Where do we find that?
Well, I think the answer is within the context of the three of us having this conversation. It's us being on our organization's testing committee. You know, and so it's in our little small world of martial arts under our organization's umbrella, then you know it's the folks like us to make that enforcement, and it is an extremely difficult thing to do at times, I have to say.
That's very, very nice.
Yeah, so you know, you have somebody that, you know, and another thing too is you're looking at somebody else's art, and I just
judging an art picture.
We're not fighters. In other words, we may be fighters, but that's not what we're doing when we're training in Aikido. And the stuff that we're talking about is not fighting. We're talking about learning forms, learning themes, being able to teach and demonstrate forms and names of techniques and all of that. But at no point are we truly absolutely tested in our testing, in our exam process or anything else. At no point are we absolutely 100% tested as anybody would be in a street fight type scenario. So again, fighting is not what we're talking about when we're talking about performing Aikido tests, going through exams, demonstrating and reciting the knowledge and information, demonstrating it and things like that. So, you know, I think there's a difference there. So when we're observing these tests and we're seeing, you know, we're watching somebody else doing something, but it's not us actually doing it. And more than not, it's not us actually experiencing that technique. Every now and then we may hop out on that test. So we're actually on the outside observing is something. It's not like we're BJJ instructors where we're going to go and roll with our underling and we're going to say, yeah, either they pass or they don't. I mean, it's not quite like that. We're observing something that's occurring. So
you're saying that the test committee is the one that's going to be setting those standards at the minimum?
Well, I think the test committee is the one to enforce is the one to enforce the standards.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's kind of like first boots on the ground, kind of first step in enforcement. And maybe that committee gets overridden by the top dogs or what have you, but that is, I would say, yes. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the folks on that committee, whoever's actually judging, that exam, if we're talking about Aikido exams.
Right.
But we get our criteria, we get our orders from the teaching committee, and we kind of follow from there, right?
Yeah, and there's different
mm.
things involved with that, and there's different, any organization with multiple people, and there's different perspectives and things like that, where you have a group trying to make a common decision, and so there are those dynamics involved in that sort of
That's with any
situation.
But you know what? It leads back to this, and tell me if I'm missing the mark here. The bottom line, when you get into this area, you're talking about leadership.
It's true.
And if you don't have individuals who are really understanding or trying to learn leadership, it can get very difficult, and putting that also, it's not like we don't have role models, or how can I say, it's not a mystery how an organization implements getting the quality of what they want on the output, right? I don't know if I made myself clear. You can look at it from a military standpoint, from a business standpoint, from a school standpoint. Everything is giving us a path for that, but it comes back to that leadership. If the clarity is not there with the leadership, problems. What do you think about that, Steve? That it boils back to leadership, getting these minimal and maximum areas.
Well, I think that, as Aikido metamorphoses into whatever it's going to go into, and as time goes, every one of us needs leadership, no matter what level. If I'm the head Shihan, I need leadership from the head Shihan. So we always have to be looking up to and getting their input of what's our next step. And if there's a break in that chain, then we tend to have things on the bottom diluted, and we start doing our own randori, our own chaos. So
yeah, that's problematic in an organization. You can't do that. Like, let's say you got McDonald's. You can't have another McDonald's making a hamburger a little different.
Right.
You can't get Carl's Jr. making fries a little bit different than that. What's your feeling, Aaron?
I think this is where I separate a little bit from you guys, because
Good.
I think that people are different, and a strong leadership is inclusive of everybody. So you look at your strongest leaders, and they were very inclusive. And you look at Romans, or you look at the Mongols, and they incorporated those who they conquered into their ranks and their numbers, right? And they let local leaders continue to be local leaders, and so and things like that. So it depends on how you look at leadership. From a top-down organizational perspective, I would think, and I'm not a high-level organizational leader, but I would think that you want as many numbers under your umbrella by which you can progress, the art that you are, teaching. But with that, also, you're a custodian to Aikido, right? So you're not, we're all custodians. And so now when you have an organization and you have different teachers, you have different strengths. I mean, with our teachers that we have here, they have completely different framework. They have a completely different mindset on similarities, but the fundamentals it's like they're completely different. One's going in straight directions, maybe another one's going in circles, and another one's in a sphere or something else. And so from an organizational perspective, if it's from the perspective of being a custodian to the art, then I think that you want to have a central standard, but it's also up to you, up to that organization to allow those under you to come up and develop as much as possible.
Yes, that's very
And
good statement.
that is moving forward. And maybe they don't all look exactly the same as you do. Maybe it doesn't all look, now take a basic test. Ikkyo, Nikkyo, Sankyo. Okay, show us basic techniques. Show us some basic warm-ups, some basic Aikido structure. You get past the Sandan, maybe we don't need structure as much, and look at the individual's development and things like that, or whatever rank that would be suitable for that. But at some point, the individual outgrows the structure of the organization. So if that individual is going, if they are truly developing themselves, then they're going to outgrow the structure. If we're truly growing as artists and truly developing ourselves, at some point we're gonna build ourselves up beyond this structure that was used to get us to where, to bring us up and to transmit this art and this understanding. The structure is it's like it's only good for so long. And we come up.
Great point.
Yeah, I like that. Where I'm wrestling with that just a little bit, there's a great Zen teacher, Suzuki, and he put a book out called The Beginner's Mind. And in that, he actually deals with this about structure and expression within structure. And this is what he said, and this is why I'm kind of like having to deal with it a little. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, the Western mind kind of misses what this really is leading to. He says, it is not that the structure that you're expressing outside of the structure that makes the art so magnificent. It is about being able to express what's inside the structure that makes it magnificent. And I kind of relate to that because, like in music, the greatest guitarists in the world, they still are required to do a beautiful scale. It's the same scale. But how they express themselves within that scale is where the difference be. They're not allowed to go in and say a G major scale is now this. And I have grown.
The Kionwaza versus an Oyawaza.
Kionwaza, yeah, right. The structure, though, within that is still, as we all get, come out the ranks here, is the basics. Being able to demonstrate what that is within there. And I agree with Aaron. There is a point, though, that martial artist, that Aikidoist, he's going to burst. I think we all experience it. Your sensei gets to a point where he's like, hey, go open your own dojo, or go down, or you have a student that you're having to let express. Well, Steve, let's move into the next topic. This is